Well, we are sitting quietly, but let's now sit more quietly. In other words, try to bring the body, keep the body still, and as it were, sink down into those depths of stillness. Mm-hmm. If I ask myself, what have you come for, and what are we able to provide for you? This really is the answer, isn't it? It's not what I say or what you see. It is I'm sure you all realize it already to some extent, but it's to deepen the realization that in this world of change, there is that dimension of changelessness, or of rest from this incessant activity that we call the world. Of course, this on our last morning, there's a long list of to-dos. Have we packed up and got everything? So at times when we get sort of swallowed up, as it were, by the action, it is important to, if we're interested to pursue this work, to punctuate it by reconnecting with the depth. And that's why regularity of practice is emphasized. If we're meditating, to just do it regularly, particularly when we don't want to do it. And then gradually we become more and more acquainted with the fact that there is this world of constancy and the world of inconstancy. The world you can rely on and the world you can't. That which you can trust and that which you cannot trust. Except that it will always be changing. This really is our salvation. In this world, we, like the grass, we grow up, we die down, and that's it. Dust to dust. In the real world, which is the world that endures, then we find really what we long for, what we all of us in our deep hearts long for, which is the peace, the freedom, and the infallible love we all yearn for. It's always here and now. This morning, as often happens, somebody kindly asked me, "How are you?" And as usual, I find really at a loss how to answer it. Of course, it's a typical greeting that seems to be all over the world now. Sort of, "How are you?" "Oh, fine, thanks." So sometimes "How are you?" or something. Well, that's okay. But if we just consider it, you may notice I don't normally ask, "How are you?" Because at a deeper level, one knows that everybody is whole, complete, and perfect. There's nothing wrong with anyone or anything. But down in this world of change, of course, it's all change. So we can talk forever about how we are, the changing conditions of our lives, which may or may not be of interest to anybody else. But in truth, we don't need to ask questions, do we? Because there is no question. Questions belongs to this up and down world of duality. Oneness can just look at someone, enter into that corresponding depth, and there's just a recognition, isn't there? A recognition of something beyond change, beyond the how are you. It's really just an exchange of love, isn't it? Pure love that asks no questions, makes no demands. It's just pure like that, isn't it? Russia has preserved some of the more traditional understandings of the faith, and you'll see when I pass it around that the dragon, which is the world, really, the world of change, the world of good and bad, and forever. There's the dragon. And see, the horse, of course, is a horse of light, isn't it? White colour. And St. George, if you could... Oh, there's the eye. You see, there's God, the eye looking down from above, the observer. Because there's always higher observation. There's our observation as best we can manage it. But of course, beyond that's a higher observation. So there is the eye of God. And you look at St. George's face is completely serene and calm, completely connected with that unchanging oneness. So, and of course with it, he has a halo of light around his head because he's in the light, isn't he? And his spear, you see, you can hardly see it. It's just like a thread of consciousness, really. That's what it is. He's just looking at this, just like we listen to the motor cars on the road and say, oh, it's just a motor car coming and going, without any sort of, oh gosh, people looting the world, I must stop it and we'll turn to electric cars or something, without getting involved in it. Just like that. And you see the horse there's no blood, there's no trying to kill the monster because you're just wasting what for? It's like waking up from a bad dream. You don't need to go back and kill the poor dream. The dream's just a dream. You've woken up and what's happened to it? Forgotten about it, haven't you? So there we are. The horse just dances over the bad dream, and St. George is completely unruffled by it. Goes on for safe in the invisible hand of God. You see. So, very, very important instruction of Jesus: resist not evil. So don't get fooled into entering into the conflicts of this world. Well, you can do, and you can, of course, you're free to do so, and you may do good work there. But there's always there's a higher, more effective way of working, which is this. See, you with your own strength and your own resources, what can you do? You can pick up some plastic, and you can do a few other things. But see, with this, you remove the obstacle to the almighty mercy of God, which is the most powerful force in the world. Because you've only got to just recognize here and now, in this room, there is this stillness that is not dead, but is actually the strength that holds us, life that is living us, the love that is in us. In fact, all that really is significant about us. is of that. It's funny, all these books I've been pouring out in recent years, they all seem rather like a sort of past chapter of my life now. I sort of almost redundant. I feel somehow that as we really in actual fact do grow more into spirit, the world of words and so-called human communication, you just grow out of it, literally. And it's not that it's like you don't grow out of, you always grow into something better, you see. Because how can real communication be bounded by bits of paper, or even by having it or not having it, or distances or times? Real communication passes all barriers, doesn't it? It doesn't even require any effort. It just enters. It just enters the heart, no matter where it is or under what conditions. It passes through walls. Barriers mean nothing to it. Barriers belong to the world of duality, of limitation. So I do hope you'll take heart at the frustrations of this world, when you apparently lose what you love, or don't get what you feel you need. Because as and when, I hope you'll discover, as I've discovered, we grow ever more into this oneness. All our human failures they melt away in the total providence of what this is. And then you see that my life was just getting in the way, really. I was just a little boy, who had to learn his lessons and learn to wake up, come home. There are different categories of dreams at different levels of consciousness. And most of them, as you say, they just come and go and we don't remember them. And then occasionally we are given something like this, which we remember very clearly, and remember it for probably the rest of our lives, and can describe it as clearly now as the day when it happened. There are several examples in the Bible of this. For example, dreams that mark significant instructions as were given to people. God appeared in a dream and told Joseph to go into Egypt, or something like this. And you might ask, well, why don't I? But there we are. Sorry. So certainly, occasionally, we do have these very significant dreams. Well, we must, if there's a lesson to be learned, then it is a lesson from higher consciousness, if that's... there you are, you received the comfort of your mother, and then you were given a trial to undergo, but your mother was with you. You've come through. No, these things are for real. Most certainly, we've talked a little bit about death, haven't we? What is death? Death is passing into a higher level, really, into another life. It isn't just finish. I certainly couldn't begin to sort of analyse it, but it's very helpful to think in terms of levels, you see. And if you think of at a point in the journey from lower consciousness to higher consciousness, there's a point called death. So you go through, as it were, the gate of death, and then there are levels beyond that. There's not just one whoosh all the same. It depends on how you have prepared in this life. What you carry with you, what may happen to you after death. I don't know the details, but plenty of people have speculated about it. Don't think anybody really knows, but you can think your own thoughts about it. Well, words get a bit confusing, don't they? One word sort of melts into another, and you don't know really where one ends and another begins. Of course it was, you see, everything has reality at its level, doesn't it? When you're dreaming a dream down here, a bad dream, the usual sort of everyday dream, it's real until you wake up, isn't it? And then you see it isn't as real. You come, or you move to a higher level of reality, then when you look back, it doesn't seem so real. I was talking earlier on about this greeting, how are you, for example? You know, at its level, it's totally real and functional and valid. From a higher point of view, you know, it becomes a bit sort of, well, what for? You know, it loses its reality, doesn't it? So no doubt, all the way along. Look, the dragon is totally real at its level, isn't it? I mean, most of us spend most of our lives down here struggling with it. This may seem impossibly out of our reach, but it isn't really. So there's no need to dismiss anything. Everything is valid in its place. That's why it's very useful just not to judge, not to criticize. Don't dismiss anything. At the time it was extremely significant, wasn't it? The test of these things often is, does it endure, does it last? The fact that it's lasted indicates that in its place it was real. Now these are, well, there you are. You describe it as a hug, but obviously your mother wasn't there physically, was she? It was a spiritual hug. But you call it a hug? Indeed it was. You know, we talk of God's arms, we talk of this stillness as the invisible arms. God's everlasting arms that holds all creation. But it doesn't mean to say he's got arms like this. But what are these? Why do we have arms this shape if they're not the crystallization of a spiritual? When I look at you, it's as though I hold you with invisible arms, isn't it? I hug you invisibly. I don't have to even, you know, my arms can be still, but I embrace you. The love with which I embrace you is no less real, is it? And you see, because your mother came to you from a place beyond cancer, where there is no cancer, where there is no illness, that higher level of consciousness, beyond illness, was able to help you through your illness. I am, by the way, very honoured and glad that some of you want to read this latest book of mine, which you'll read how I struggled so much with relationships, with my marriage, and with trying to figure out what a person is and what a person isn't, and then unrequited love, and I do think it's certainly in my experience, this spiritual work is not a quick fix, but a long, long struggle through all the changes and chances of this life. I know some people have a sort of instant enlightenment experience, but that hasn't been my way at all. And I've never actually met anyone who has had one of those instant enlightenment experiences, so I'm a little bit sort of about it. But I do look back on life as a great school through many difficult lessons. Whether we ever finally graduate, I'm not sure. It's maybe somewhere up there in the higher realms of consciousness. Have to wait and see, won't we?